Hi everyone. Do you have problems with any particular type of junction? Is it roundabouts? Is it crossroads? Some pupils struggle with one or the other. They're usually the main two things. But honestly, what I've found over the last little bit is that it's not particular junctions that people struggle with, it's skills. Now, how I found this out was through sitting in and observing my instructors, and I do this every week. I sit in and lesson observe and make sure that they're doing things as good as they can. It helps the pupil, it helps the instructor, it also helps me as well. But what I found on writing the notes on these lessons, that I was writing down similar things with virtually all lessons and all instructors. And these things I'm going to share with you today because I don't think that it's a particular junction that people might struggle with. I think it's a particular skill. So we're going to have a look. The first one we're going to have a look at is gripping the steering wheel. People often hold the wheel too tight because they're scared. They feel if they grip the wheel tighter, they're more in control. It's actually the opposite that happens. If you hold the wheel too tight, your steering movements will become very jerky. And honestly, every junction that you come to, you will feel that lack of control and that little bit of panic. And this actually makes you grip the wheel even tighter. What I try and get my pupils to do is to have as relaxed a grip as possible. You could always grip the wheel that little bit tighter if that serious situation arose, and that then makes the steering lovely and smooth, lovely and fluent, and people relax more. Let's see how else gripping the wheel affects our driving. So the first problem that we're going to look at regarding gripping the hands is actually changing gear, and this can actually cause a couple of problems. When you're actually going for the gear stick, because your hands are that tense, you might not even feel that it's gone into the wrong gear. That's gone into third, where you might have wished to choose first gear, and because your hands are so tense, you haven't been able to feel the spring to be able to put it into first gear correctly. Also, because your hands are so tense, as you're actually driving down the road, you'll take one hand off the steering wheel to go for the gear stick, and this one's going to pull this way, causing your car to drift across. That can't happen. Now, the next one we're going to have a look at is actually gripping the wheel too tight, generally with the left hand, while people use the signals. You don't actually need to. You can hold with this right hand and let the left hand loose. But if I do grip the wheel, I'm actually holding the wheel to get to the signal, and as you can see, my car drifts everywhere. And that's going to cause loads of problems. Try and relax your grip, as loose a pressure as you can. Another problem that's slightly related to what we've just talked about is actually using your mirrors and gripping the wheel too tight. And what people actually do, the hands follow their eyes. In other words, as I check my right hand door mirror, I hold so tight that the car drifts over. That is also down to staring at the mirror, but it is a combination with gripping this wheel too tight. I'm not going to do it for long, I'm going to get past this hazard here, but when I get back into the left lane and it's really clear, just for a second, I'm just going to take my hands off the wheel. The car stays straight. So when the car moves when you're checking your mirror, or in fact when you're changing gear, it's your right hand that generally does it. Okay, the next one is listening to your engine, or listening to what's going on with the car. The next one is much less obvious. It causes many different problems to people's driving that they often don't realise. Listening to an engine and listening to what your car's doing is a really important skill. The first thing that I'm going to touch on is changing gears. Changing gear, how often's your instructor said change up into third or change down a gear? And that's literally a listening skill. And when people are concentrating on the other things that are going on with the driving, they forget to listen. So that's an important part to it. Another thing, how do you manage your speed when you're driving? Do you look at the speedo all the time? You shouldn't really be doing that to manage speed. Yes, to see what speed you're doing, but then to maintain a good speed and keep the correct speed for what you're doing comes from your ears, it comes from listening. You can tell whether your speed is raising or lowering just by the sound of it. And what I tend to do with my pupils to encourage this skill is actually cover the speedo, and it forces the issue regarding listening. Another thing, how often have you ever driven down the road and left your indicators on? Has your instructor ever told you to take that signal off? Probably. And that's a listening skill as well. Quite simply, when you put them on, you can hear them. Okay, you don't need to actually look at your dashboard, although that is very obvious. You can hear whether they're on. So keep listening for that reason as well. Another thing which is really important for your test is listening to the person who's sat in that seat, whether it be your instructor on your lessons or whether it be your examiner on your test. People don't listen. And on your lessons, if you don't listen to your instructor, a couple of things start to happen. Risk increases. Your instructor then can't maybe ask you questions to deal with things. They have to give you direct instruction. And when people get direct instruction or they're told what to do, that raises the tension as well. So try and relax, but keep your ears open to all that's going on around all the time. Next, we're going to have a look at feet coordination. What you're doing with your pedals. A lot of people still have problems with the feet, and it causes untold problems when you're learning to drive. I've already done videos on how to pivot your foot between the brake and the accelerator. And you can sort of do a similar thing with a clutch. You can actually, when you're dragging your foot off the clutch, you can actually let it brush against the floor, and when you do need to actually hold it at the bike, then drop it down onto the floor so you've got a little bit more control. It's little bits like this that help, but mainly it's information. Instructors tend not to give enough information about these pedals to help the pupils understand how they really work. Just for example, a lot of people think to move the car away quickly, you need to move the clutch up quickly. That's not the case. So, the other recurring theme that you're going to hear a lot throughout this video is you must relax. Without being able to relax, your feet aren't going to work properly. Your feet aren't going to do those micro adjustments that you probably need sometimes. Try and chill out. Lastly, but most importantly, we're going to be looking at a skill that I call locking on, or what you're doing with your eyes. The next skill we're going to look at is, for me, the most important one. It's locking on. People stare at things they're scared of, and honestly, it causes loads of issues, and for me is the biggest cause of people failing the driving test. Now, I can liken it to a saying that most people have probably heard, rabbit in the headlamps. Now, what happens, I don't know whether any of you have ever experienced this, but when a rabbit runs across the road in front of you, rather than continuing running and getting out of the way, they tend to stop, freeze and look at the headlamps of the car. And it's sort of that same instinct that people tend to do on the road. Now, this does deserve a video all of its own accord, which I am going to come up with shortly, but I'll just give you the bones of this. It can happen in many different ways. This oncoming car, I might be staring at it, and like I've explained before, steer away to one side, steer into a void if you like. How many of you people have been too close maybe to this parked car on the left if there's a car coming the other way? It does happen all the time. What we need to be assessing here is not the car, but the space. And it's that space that tells us what to do, not the actual hazard. The other classic one that I see all the time is with cyclists, where people, what they'll do, they'll tend to stare at the cyclist or at the problem rather than seeing that there's a big clear space for you to actually go round. So it does happen a lot. I'm just going to show you a quick example of what actually happened to one of my pupils on test. I'll explain to you why she was locking on. This is West Derby in Liverpool. The instruction has been given to turn left at this junction. Although it was a terribly timed instruction, the examiner at this point told the pupil to take the next road on the right. You may have already noticed that this is a no entry to the right, but all my pupil did, because she was in a rush to follow the examiner's instructions, she just stared at the floor and watched the keep clear. And as she goes to turn in the road, the examiner had to intervene, and that's the test failed. Locking on claims another victim. What I'd like people to do, if possible, is let me know in the comments faults or problems that you've had. And what I'm going to try and do is link them to these skills. Luckily enough, here's a couple of cyclists. Don't stare at them, look at the space that we've got available, and we haven't got enough space, so I'm just holding back. But when a space becomes available, inexperienced drivers or poor drivers then don't make use of that space, they don't take advantage of it. There's a space coming up, so I'm preparing for it, checking my mirrors, out and gone. Plenty of room, plenty of space, seeing where they are coming back. But people don't do that. They'll be locked onto that cyclist for far too long just because they're scared of it. So what I'm really getting at is, again, this recurring theme of being able to relax. If you can relax, hands relax, yeah, good. Feet relax, eyes relax, and also your ears will then be relaxed enough to take in your surroundings. So all of these things that I've talked about, they're all linked. I know it's easier said than done, but you've got to try and chill. The big thing that I always start off with is relaxing hands. You should try and hear skin on leather all the time. If you can't, and your hands are padding, like I showed you at the start of the video, that's not quite good enough. Here's a couple of examples of locking on. Yes, the weather's atrocious, but watch the car in front. She sees the hazard, the lorry, locks on, and decides to brake and stay right next to it. Why not use lane 3 if you're scared? Why not use the space and go away and round and past the hazard? This time watch the car from the opposite direction.
after the black BMW turns, the lady coming the other way locks onto me, forgets about priority, and then when she realises she can go, she cuts the corner and nearly goes into the Mini. All from locking on. Now, I'm not criticising here. All I'm trying to show you is that this happens to a lot of drivers day in, day out. We all make mistakes, and that's why this video is so important to learn from.
Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I hope that's helped. Which one of those skills do you tend to struggle with most? If you can, leave us a comment. I'll always try and get back to you, and keep practicing as much as you can. I'll see you all soon.